Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good morning. Welcome to Financial Issues. Today is Wednesday, June 12th, 2024, and we thank you for tuning in to Financial Issues, where we talk about defunding darkness with our biblically responsible investment strategy. Stay tuned if you want to learn more about how you can defund darkness by investing or refusing to invest your money in companies who are fueling an ungodly agenda with things like abortion, pornography, the LGBTQ agenda, human rights violations, all the things that as Christians we are praying against every day. We help you to integrate and protect and defend those values in the way that you invest by screening out companies who would use God's money that you're in control of to do those nefarious things. And be encouraged to fund the light, to be a joyful and generous giver as we talk about stewardship here at Financial Issues. So if you're new to the program, thank you for tuning in. We hope that you will continue watching and find out how you can be a better financial steward. Well, speaking of good financial stewards or not, let's turn our attention to the land of economic brilliance over there in California. San Francisco is opening the city's first $5 million taxpayer-funded free food market. Seth, what in the world is happening over there?
It reminds me, Shana, Ronald Reagan. I'm from the government, and I'm here to help. Don't believe it, folks. It's true. So San Francisco, Shana, as you mentioned, recently opened this $5.5 million free food market. Basically, approved residents can present a benefits eligibility card to get free groceries. It's a facility in the area. Multiple grocery stores have been forced to close amid skyrocketing crime. It sounds like a crime problem more than a hunger problem to me, Shana, but it's the District 10 market, the first of San Francisco's food empowerment markets funded by the San Francisco Human Services Agency. So eligibility for the Costco-style benefits card is limited to individuals who live within a specific zip code. They're verified social service clients meeting certain criteria, as well as those referred by one of 11 community organizations in the market's referral network. Shana, this just reeks of trouble to me. And it seems like what sadly happens in governments like this, a quick fix solution that ends up having way more bad ramifications than the government leaders can see at the time. And history tells us these never end well. What are your thoughts on this?
That they never end well.
Yes, and it's not going to. That's right.
Yes, and history will repeat itself, and it will not end well. But that's what's happening in the day of big government. You know, more and more people. And this, it goes way back, but do you remember when Obama took office and, you know, he was encouraging everybody to get an Obama phone and, you know, sign up for food stamps and things like this, because the government, it's all about a power grab. You know, when the government is giving you things, they're providing food for you, they're giving you your phone, you know, you don't really have to work, you get unemployment benefits, all of the things that these programs were never really intended to do. You know, you get 50% plus one person on government benefits, and they're never going away. They're not going to vote themselves out of benefits. But what they don't realize is that socialism and communism only works while people are still willing to work. What happens when the rest of us idiots find out that we can get paid to do nothing? You know, are we going to continue working? Well, I guess we will, because, you know, we read that old antiquated text that says, if you don't eat, you don't work. And, you know, that you should use the talents and abilities that God has given you to be productive, that you should work at whatever you're doing to the best of your ability. You know, all of those things that are found in the Bible. You know, just it reminds me of the disciples, and even Jesus. Jesus was a carpenter by trade.
Yeah, absolutely. He worked a job. He worked with his hands.
Worked a job.
That's a good thing. Right?
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
And, was it Paul that was a tent maker?
Yeah, he was.
Yep. And, he even said that doing ministry was a job, and that it would be right, it would be just if the people that he was serving would pitch in and help him. But he said, I'm going to work, and I'm going to, continue to pay my own way when I can. And so what the government's doing is just a travesty here. It's all about a power grab, and government growing more and more bigger and bigger all the time. It's just like California's brilliant idea to implement a $20 minimum wage for restaurant workers. I mean, they forgot to put the part in the law that says that restaurant workers can't pass that cost along to patrons, because that's what's happening. It's just making food more expensive in their state. And, when consumers won't pay the price, guess what? Those businesses are going to go under, because, you can't operate. We're not like the government. We can't just borrow money to no end and run huge deficits and not make profits and stay in business. It just, the real world doesn't work that way. Or, did you see the pictures of that UCLA campus after school let out? All of how they were camped out there in UCLA, and they just abandoned. They left all of their garbage, all of their tent, everything there, and just, I guess, expected someone else to come behind them and clean it up. And you know what? I hope it's still there on their first day of class.
Seriously. Shana, that's exactly right. Jumping back to what you said about the $20 minimum wage, isn't it? It's so sad to think about, because I'm sure these people who are fighting for this, we've even had people comment on the show before criticizing us for criticizing the $20 minimum wage. And I think what people don't realize, Shana, is that, having something like this happen, there are so many ripple effects to it that are bad. Business owners, wealthy people who can provide jobs for people, are now being, essentially chained to have to pay people a lot more money. And just like you said, it's just going to add, with rising food costs as well, it's going to add to these business closing. So these people who fought for $20 minimum wage are going to lose their job anyway.
Right.
It's really sad.
A lot of times we can't see past the end of our nose. And, the government is complicit in that, too. It reminds me of what happened during COVID, remember when they beefed up the federal unemployment benefits, and it became much more profitable. I mean, I talk to people every day that it was much more profitable for them to stay on unemployment than go back into the workforce, even as companies were hiring again, because they had to do what was best for their families. And, it's silly. I mean, what person in their right mind is going to go back to work when they're earning more from the government? And it's just, it's a travesty that's what the land of the free and the home of the brave has come to.
Yeah, absolutely.
The land of the
free food,
people with their hands out.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Free markets and universal basic income.
Yeah.
All of these things. It's just crazy.
I think, Shana, it's a good reminder of how badly we need Christ and we need his word. And speaking of his word, our stewardship verse of the day is Luke 16, verse 10. It says, one who is faithful in very little is also faithful in much, and one who is dishonest in very little is also dishonest in much. What a contrast that is, Shana, to what the state of California is doing, right?
It is.
I think the scripture is really clear that we are commanded to be faithful with what God has given us charge over. We're to take responsibility of that. We're not to seek handouts and do things like what's happened in California. We're supposed to do that ourselves. Your marriage, kids, your home, your church, your work, your provision, your community, and I think especially your money as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why, the S in FISM is for stewardship.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we talk about as we encourage people to be good stewards of everything that the Lord has given them. I don't know that we have time to go fully into, all of the scripture verse for today. So we'll probably come back with that in just a few minutes as we get to some of those other topics.
Yeah. That sounds good, Shana. Hey, and just a reminder, folks, for those of you who are new listeners, we do offer this partnership. It's a great way for you to be able to use your money in a way that honors God. So check us out at financialissues.org. Check out that $132 a year partnership. You will not regret it.
You'll get some practical steps into becoming a better financial steward of the assets that God has trusted you to manage. Don't go anywhere. We're going to take a break, but we'll be back with more financial issues right after.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common, the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
Well, Luke 16, verse 10 says, one who's faithful in a very little is also faithful in much, and one who's dishonest in very little also dishonest in much. Shanna and I were just talking about that before that break there. Really good stuff here, Shanna. I think you had some thoughts to share on this foundational verse of stewardship that we talk about.
Yeah, we talked about our marriage, our kids, our home, our church, our work, community. There's that possessive pronoun again.
Right. Yeah.
Ours and yours and mine. It reminds me of, toddlers, 2 and 3-year-olds. If your 2-year-old Seth walks up to you with your debit card, you think they're going to be able to use it properly?
I don't think so. And Josiah has tried to steal it before, and he'll throw it as stuff. We were talking about that on Tuesday's show, how he throws stuff that he's not supposed to. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Uses it as a Frisbee, right? Because he doesn't know its intended purpose. Yep. Just because we call something ours doesn't make it so. And the world is very good about using those possessive pronouns, ours and mine and yours. But, and the scripture, I think, this particular scripture is misused and twisted a lot by the prosperity preachers. It tells us that if we give, we will get more. Well, the laws of reciprocity say that we reap what we sow, but God really looks on the heart of it and the intent of the heart. So we don't give to get more stuff. Actually, what we get more of is more responsibility, right? When we prove faithful with a little, we are given more responsibility, management of more resources. So we will never be able to give $1,000 on a $10,000 paycheck if we've never given $10 on a $100 paycheck. That's just, I think, a time-tested truth. People who don't get the discipline of giving won't apply it as their resources grow. So we really must spend some time getting to know God. When we do, we come to understand His value and His worth, and we begin to then devote all of our resources, time, talent, and treasure to honoring Him.
Yeah, it's really good, Shanna. And, it kind of brings up this idea of worry and greed. We talk about this, sort of a continuation of yesterday's conversation. Why do you think biblical stewardship can be so difficult when we're tempted towards worry and greed?
Well, I think a lot of times with our priorities. We prioritize the gift over the giver. We live in fear that what we have will be taken away and what life will be like if things are taken away. And if we really understand, and I remember, as I was praying through when COVID happened, so I'm a financial advisor in practice, and we talk about finances here and the markets here about what's going to happen, people's retirement all the time on the show. And when COVID hit and the market dropped suddenly and very dramatically, started to get a lot of questions. People's fear meters and worry meters started overworking. And, I really prayed about what to say to people. And, God reminded me that he created everything. He made everything and he owns everything. And so since he created us, he's responsible for taking care of us. And he reminded me of, what happened with the Israelites after he delivered them, the Hebrews, after he delivered them from Egypt and they wandered in the desert. Well, he gave them shoes that didn't wear out. He gave them manna that fell from heaven. He provided for all of their needs. Now, they weren't exactly happy about that, the way that God chose to do it, but it was God's decision, and he proved himself faithful. And what he reminded me is that he loves us and he's going to take care of us no matter what, and he's going to do it in the way that he sees fit, even if it's not the way that we might choose to be taken care of. So, instead of growing our stocks and bonds or having Social Security, or, God could choose to do what he did for the Israelites. He could rain down manna from heaven. But the bottom line is that we shouldn't prioritize our things, our gifts, over the giver, that we should look for value, true value, which is a relationship with God.
It's good stuff, Shanna. Let's shift gears here now to kind of talk about how biblical stewardship sort of fits into the FISM investment strategy as a whole. So I guess just the first question is, how does it fit? How does this concept of biblical stewardship relate to the work that our partners do every day in managing their portfolios and trying to see if there are good buys and trying to rebalance and things like that? How does it work?
Yeah, so those are the real practical things that we look at, just like any good money manager does. We evaluate different investments, different companies to see if they have a good business model. Are they using capital efficiently? Are they increasing their earnings and sales and all of those things? But more importantly, our first priority is to make sure that we're honoring God by screening out companies that are using shareholder dollars to promote ungodly agendas. And that is what we call defunding darkness. So, we have this movement in corporate America, and mostly because activist investors have approached these companies to fund their own agendas. And it's the agendas that it's not the Christian agenda. It's a different agenda. They're being asked to fund Planned Parenthood, to fund gay pride parades and festivals, to give money to political action committees that are really trying to change the definition of what God says marriage and family is. So we don't want to invest God's money in companies that would then turn around and use that money to promote ungodly agendas. We call that defunding darkness. And then the other part of stewardship, of course, the part that most people think about when you hear stewardship is giving. So we encourage you to be obedient, joyful, and generous givers. We call that funding the light.
That's good. And how about in kind of this way here, Shanna, how does this play out in where specifically we choose to invest the money that we steward? We screen out companies that are involved in things that are, as Christians, that we're praying against every day. The abortion agenda, the LGBTQ agenda, that's the first screen. We screen those out, and then we look at the things that every other smart money manager looks at. Yep. One of the topics that we talk about, and I would imagine some of our new audience might even be wondering this, is, Okay, so stewardship is a good thing, but what about taking it a step further? What about this idea of patronage and not even associating with these wicked companies, not even using Facebook or not even using a computer that's from Apple or something like that? What is patronage, Shana, and how is it similar to or different from stewardship?
So patronage is where you spend your money, not where you invest your money.
Yeah.
So the main difference here is that in investing, you're an owner. As the world calls it, you're an owner of that money. So when you buy shares of a company, you become a shareholder. You're then entitled to your share of the company's profit. A lot of times companies pay dividends back to their shareholders. So you don't get to make the day-to-day decisions about how that money is spent. That's up to the management of the company, the C-suite, the CEO, the CFO, and the board of directors. They get to decide how to redeploy that capital. So, I believe that you still have stewardship responsibility over where that money goes because you still have what the world calls ownership. With patronage, it's different. Whenever you purchase a good or a service, you're exchanging your money for that good or service. So the responsibility, you're no longer responsibility for that money because it doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to the company or the individual that you purchased something from. You're now responsible to steward that good or service in a way that honors God. The person who is now the owner of that money is going to have to answer for their stewardship decisions about that money. So I think it's great if you can make better choices. And this is an issue that I got really bogged down with when I first heard of biblically responsible investing, because I thought, my computer, I use Microsoft. They're not biblically responsible. I need to switch. Well, what are the only other options? There's not a biblically responsible option.
Right, yeah.
And there's no way that I can not use a computer in my business, in my practice, and in ministry. I mean, we're using computers right now just to deliver this program. Started thinking about my cell phone. Well, there wasn't a biblically responsible cell phone provider. So it became a really hard thing. I started looking at, Amazon and Walmart. Now, they're not biblically responsible. And I thought, this is just discouraging. You can't really do it. And then as I prayed through that, God really highlighted the difference for me between ownership and patronage. And I think there's some great opportunities when you can make better choices in your patronage, in your consumership. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Shannon, it brings to mind, of course, in the last couple of years, we've seen these boycotts with Target. Should we do more if we have the opportunity to do more? For example, obviously we would tell everyone listening, do not invest in Target, but even not shopping there. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I haven't shopped at Target since the AFR boycott years ago, and haven't missed a beat.
Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, if there's an organized boycott, I think that can really convey a message that can really do some damage to a company when that happens. And that's exactly the tactic that the left has used. They've come to him and said, hey, if you don't give us money for this project, this LGBTQ project, or funding Planned Parenthood, we're going to say that your company is bigots and, tell everybody not to shop there because you don't support our agenda. And corporate America has caved. They've caved to that agenda. I think that there's some CEOs that fully buy into that agenda and they want to support it, but I think it's a fear tactic for many others. But with our investing, this is the individual. We send action alerts when we sell stocks because they're no longer biblically responsible, and that's going to communicate to the companies, hey, you don't have to give in to this other side. We're not asking you to support us, but you don't have to support them either. But if we can make better choices in our consumership, I think that's a good idea. But I think we have to stand firm in our investing, because at the end of the day, we're going to be held accountable for what we did with the time, talent, and treasure that we were trusted with.
Well, good stuff as always there, Shana. I appreciate those answers so much. Folks, if you listen or watch on a half-hour version of the show, obviously we got to bid you a farewell. I hope it's not farewell for a long time, though, but just farewell to the next segment, because that means that you found the live show. You got to catch us live every day, 9 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Central Time. Best way to watch is financialissues.org/live, financialissues.org/live. We got more financial issues coming up right after this break. Stick with us.
When it comes to handling money, I'm lost. How to save, when to invest, where to invest. As a Christian, I don't want to give my money to people who are going to use it for things God hates. When I discovered financial issues, it was like a burden was lifted off my shoulders. Not only did I gain access to a simple investment strategy that I can manage myself, I also have the peace of mind that my money will not be going to companies that actively promote things that God hates.
Invest your money in a God-honoring way. Go to financialissues.org.
Hi, this is Shana Bird, the host of Financial Issues. Financial Issues family is so blessed to have saved tens of thousands of babies, all thanks to the generous support of you, our listeners and viewers. For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. Please go to preborn.org, that's preborn.org, or financialissues.org and click on the Preborn logo. Save a baby, save a life.
Samaritan is direct sharing of medical needs. So every month, members are sending their checks or maybe electronic payment directly to another member that had a medical need. And so that helps it be much more affordable because it cuts out the middleman, and it also provides incredible flexibility for our members to make healthcare choices that they want to make, their healthcare dollars spent the way they want to spend it. So it's not their employer, it's not the government, it's them making the decision.
So I guess it is a little bit of a financial stewardship decision because, you know, I personally have been using health sharing for a long time, and when I got off of the treadmill of traditional health insurance and switched to health sharing, my family saved a lot of money on our monthly premium cost just to stay protected.
Head over to financialissues.org/highlights to catch the complete interview and learn more about Samaritan Ministries.
One of the emphases of preborn has been ultrasound in 2 ways. An ultrasound machine if a pregnancy clinic doesn't have one, and then an ultrasound session, which we underwrite hundreds of thousands of those. We've seen over and over again the dramatic results that when a woman encounters her baby for the first time and hears that heartbeat, she realizes the magnitude of what's happening here, that there is somebody else, that's her baby. So this is why preborn pushes out ultrasound as much as we possibly can. Preborn has seen over 200,000 babies saved, over 59,000 people come to Christ, populating earth and eternity, life for this life and life forever. Save the baby's life, but save the mother's life so that she can lead that baby to Christ. If we're bringing people into this world and the mother doesn't receive Christ and the child is born and the child lives its life and doesn't receive Christ, this is not a good end. And so we have to have the gospel as part and parcel and really the heartbeat of what preborn is.
Securities offered through G.A. Repple Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Repple or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. It is June 12th today. Thanks for sticking with us. If you found the longer version of the show, welcome. You can always catch us live during the week, starting at 8 a.m. Central, 9 Eastern Time, and you can catch the full 1-hour version of the show. So if you are used to only listening to the short version, we're so glad that you found us today. And it's June 12th. That means that later this afternoon, we're going to hear from J Powell and Company. So the FOMC started a 2-day meeting yesterday, just like they do about every 6 weeks, and we're going to get their decision about interest rates later today, followed by a press conference led by J Powell, where lots of reporters get to ask him questions about the statement that he pretty much reads off. They're going to be trying to parse through every word, read between the lines, and figure out what the Fed's going to do next. And at this meeting, the Fed is also going to release their dot plots, their summary of economic projections, or the SEP. So just to go back to basics for just a second, the Federal Reserve, we're not going to really get into should it exist, but the reason that it does exist is because they are the central bank in this country, and some of the primary things that they do is the Federal Reserve regulates banks. So they require banks and other depository institutions to hold 10% of their deposits in reserve. And to stay as close to that threshold as possible without going below it, banks will loan each other money overnight back and forth to meet those reserve requirements. Now, the Federal Reserve has a dual mandate from Congress. They are to promote price stability, which is to try to control inflation, and to promote full employment, so to keep the unemployment rate from getting too high. So the Fed sets the range of short-term rates that banks pay each other on reserves overnight. The Fed funds rate has been between 5.25% and 5.5% since July of last year, so almost a whole year. Now, that's the highest that it's been since January of 2001, and that rate was raised 11 times between March of 2022 and July of 2023. So I've invited my friend and colleague, Jason MacDowell, to join us today to talk about the Fed and what we might see and what that might mean for us here at Financial Issues. So, Jason, welcome. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'll just get right to it. Jason, what do you think is going to happen today? Is the Fed going to cut? Are they going to raise? Or are they going to stay the same?
I don't think it would be any surprise to anyone if J Powell stays the same, meaning no change at all. But if he does, then that tells me that he has an opportunity for today and July and September to hit that 3-rate change or lowering rates goal that he spoke about before the end of the year, but more importantly, before the election. So in November, even though they have a meeting after election, technically very close time, that would give them the opportunity to do that.
Right. So let's go back to December of last year, because once a quarter, the Fed gives these summary of economic projections. And so that's what you're talking about, right? In that summary of economic projections, he predicted that they would be cutting rates this year, and that's what has helped to keep the markets going so strong, right? So what do you think? When's he going to do it?
Yeah, I don't know if we want to go through that. It's just like an if-then hypothetical situation. Well, if you make this decision, I know what's best for J Powell. He wants to stay in office, and how I personally, in my own opinion, view our leadership and in Congress and anybody that holds a leadership position in our government, doing what's best for themselves really is kind of a good indication of their behavior, right? Behavior science for politics. So if he makes a decision to start cutting tomorrow, hopefully it's 3 before the election, and that would look good for the current administration and keeping him in his job. Now, if Trump does win and the election and gets in, that might be a different story for him, or maybe not. There's some other things we could always unpack at a different date on those situations as well.
Right. So let's assume that, and I'm in the camp, I won't say, I think they're probably not going to do anything today, but I think there's a very good chance for July and September. In fact, I think it's almost 100% chance that it'll happen by September because of the election. So suppose that they do cut rates, whether it's today or July or September. What does that mean to the average American?
Well, specifically now that we know that it's been repeated, there's about $6 trillion in money markets right now, just kind of sitting on the sidelines. That includes, those in CDs and money markets, because the rates have been so because it's been very good for money markets because it's just liquid there. So the first thing that happens if there's a rate change, it's lowered. Short-term CD rates will be affected, and of course long-term rates as well. Where short-term CD rates will probably come down slowly by that amount. It's usually a little bit more immediate with money markets as well. So we'll see that rate change. So that'll be a decision for those in CDs that might have matured recently to look towards locking in some good rates with the long-term down the road, depending on if rates keep getting lowered. So I know that's just an option there. As far as mortgage rates, though, it's a little bit different because it's a little bit more complex. Seeing that the terms, 30 fixed, 15 fixed, depending on, or the ARM from that point, what will happen is they're not usually immediately affected. And then it also kind of depends on how many mortgage applications are now going to be in a positive versus what they were in a negative from the March 2024 reporting on that. So if there's more people applying, more people getting, some businesses as lenders may want to keep the rates high for business purposes that way. So that will also sort of be a determining factor of what could be affected with that, because there's a lot of people waiting for purchasing. I'll just wait because everyone keeps talking about the rates dropping. Why would I go lend money, borrow money now when I know it's going to be lower? So I can wait right now. So that might have caused an influx of demand.
Right. I guess the big fly in the ointment, the surprise could be if inflation doesn't cooperate, right? Because how can they cut rates if inflation is stalling out or not really going down as they expected? I guess the impetus there could be that if the unemployment rate goes up, because that's their other mandate there. So, what do you think would happen if they really counted all of the people in the labor force? Do you think everybody's being counted right now?
Not a chance. Not a chance. No, I mean, there's no way everyone could be counted, especially with companies. I don't know. There's an influx at our southern border of cheap labor coming in. Yep. Is that be counted? That's my question. Is it being counted or is it not? We are counting the people that are getting fired for that not counted number. We know that with one particular company that's been reported. So.
Yep. I think if they really counted the entire labor pool, the unemployment number would look a whole lot different. But, they're going to stick to the official numbers and continue to take victory laps on what they think is going to happen. So, how is this going to influence our strategy at Financial Issues? Well, we'll certainly issue guidance on that. But in general, when we go, and this is normal business cycles, we go through normal business cycles, and the Fed responds to some things and institutes some policies. But I think the real factor, because everybody's focusing on these rates, right? What's the Fed going to do about rates? But do you think people are paying attention to their other monetary tool, which is quantitative easing and tightening? The Fed has said that they were going to start tightening by pulling money out of the money supply, letting money roll off the books. But, what are we really seeing? With government spending, are we seeing them really stick to that tightening? What do you think?
No, not at all. No tightening. There's still a lot of spending going on. And my sort of open-ended question is, when is the printing of money going to stop and when's the spending going to stop? It's a rhetorical question. When is that going to stop? What does that do to inflation? We know what it does to inflation, so it's very rhetorical there. That's our question.
Right.
Doesn't have an answer.
That's the overarching theme. I think, the thing the horse that I beat to death pretty regularly is about government spending. But that is the thing that is going to, that is most heavily influencing inflation. And we're not hearing we're not hearing many politicians talk about cutting spending. Nope, they're just talking about how they can give out more money, how they can buy more votes, and so on and so forth. And I think it's really pretty interesting, some of the reports that I've seen. I saw this one report where at the southern border there were like some porta potties and things like that, and inside of it was like kind of an advertisement to vote for Joe Biden. Like, how does that happen? Like, what do you mean vote? Are they giving them voter registration cards? when they come in there too? You know, it's crazy. Well, Jason, thanks for joining us today. It's always good to have a conversation with another level-headed human being that believes in biblically responsible investing, believes in honoring God with the things that God has trusted us to manage. And so it's always refreshing to have that done. Well, folks, we hope that you will stick with us. We've got to take a break coming up here, but we're going to talk about more financial issues when we come back from the break. Don't go anywhere. Find out about supporting this ministry either as a monthly donor or a partner for just $132 a year.
Remember the good old days when companies stuck to just selling their products rather than using their profits to push an agenda? When you invest in a company, you become an owner of that company. And more businesses are now using your money to fund woke projects. We're called to be good stewards of all we have, and that includes ensuring your investments align with your biblical values. Thankfully, that's where Financial Issues can help. For over 25 years, Financial Issues has stood as a leader of biblically responsible investing, encouraging the body of Christ to keep funds out of companies that dishonor God. We provide Christian investors with the tools they need to build fiscally and biblically responsible portfolios. We're at the forefront of the fight, helping you not only with your finances, but advocating for truth and godly wisdom. For more information, go to financialissues.org. That's financialissues.org.
Investing is about so much more than money. It's a way we can provide a better future for our loved ones and make a greater impact for the things that matter most to us. Good stewardship is investing in things that last for eternity and not things that go against biblical values. For over 25 years, Financial Issues has provided partners with the tools they need to build a portfolio that honors God and blesses others. Become a partner with Financial Issues today to see how you can steward your resources in a God-honoring way.
Is listening, thinking about joining, there's nothing like it. It's been great. I have peace of mind. I feel confident. There's just a lot of things that y'all have added to my financial peace.
You guys are the man. So I encourage everybody, partner, portfolio after portfolio. You hear the stories. It works. And you guys make it possible.
Become a partner today by visiting financialissues.org/join. Click the green button to become a partner. That's financialissues.org/join.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Folks, hope you enjoyed that conversation with Shana and Jason there on the program. Great to be here with you all today. Thanks for joining us on Financial Issues. Couple news headlines to get to here, folks. I probably won't get to all of it in the last segment here, but a lot to talk about. We got a inflation report just came out this morning before the show. The Consumer Price Index held flat in May. It increased 3.3% from a year ago. Both numbers were a 0.1 percentage point below market expectations. So appearing that inflation is slowing in May. Now, obviously, the markets seemed very happy about this. Before we get to what the markets did today, yesterday they were mixed. Finished yesterday a little bit mixed as well. The Dow was down 0.3. The S&P was up 0.25. The NASDAQ up almost 1%. The pre-markets this morning were kind of waiting with bated breath to see what would happen once that consumer inflation number came out. The markets seemed pretty pleased with that. And right now they are having a party and a half. The Dow Jones is up almost 1%. The S&P 500 is well over 1%. And the NASDAQ is over 1.5 percentage points. Now we'll see how long that party lasts because, of course, we also have today's Federal Reserve interest rate report coming out as well. The meeting began yesterday, and at 2:00 p.m. today, the Federal Reserve will very likely announce that they will hold the line for interest rates. Obviously, anything can happen, but it seems like all indications are that they will not begin cutting rates at this meeting. We'll have to wait and see, obviously, for sure, but that's what we've got on the docket for today, folks. So we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll talk more about it on tomorrow's show. The 10-year Treasury yesterday closed under 4.4%. 4%. Right now, 10-year Treasury yields are hanging around 4.3, actually under 4.3%. So they've been tumbling here after that CPI report and waiting for the Fed decision. And oil is hanging right around $79 a barrel, a little bit higher. So it's been creeping up a little bit in the last few days. Well, folks, I have great news for you. Craig Haugaard is recovering well. He's actually recovering so well that he was able to give us an ag report today. So you don't have to hear it from me. You can hear it directly from Craig Haugaard. So here is today's ag report for you farmers and ranchers with Craig Haugaard. Welcome back, Craig.
This is Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for June 12th. According to the tug-of-war between crop ratings that are much better than the 5-year average, an export picture in which the U.S. has the competitive advantage. The monthly supply and demand report will be out late morning today, and that may give us a more definitive direction for this market. At the close, July corn was 2 1/4 cents lower at $4.49.5. Soybean futures reversed their gains of Monday due to very good U.S. crop ratings and a softer export demand outlook. The crop is currently rated at 72% good to excellent, which is 6 points better than the 5-year average. Planting progress continues to be ahead of average, with 87% of the crop in the ground versus 84% normally at this point in the year. July beans finished today 10 1/4 cents lower at $11.78 per bushel. After 9 straight days of losses, wheat had a dead cat bounce. The bounce was certainly assisted by the announcement by the head of the Russian grain union saying that 15 to 30% of their winter wheat had been damaged. That was much higher than the Ag Ministry's 1% estimate. On the other hand, wheat being offered for export out of Russia dropped by $7 per metric ton, which really doesn't line up with a severely damaged crop. It's Russia, so really who knows what the truth is. At the end of the day, Minneapolis July wheat was 3 1/2 cents higher at $6.78 3/4. Kansas City was 11 1/4 better, closing at $6.55, and went Chicago 19 cents higher at $6.26 1/2. Cotton futures were a touch higher in a very low volume session. At the close, the July futures were up 90 points at 72.73. Livestock futures struggled. We had August live cattle $1.05 lower, $178.92.5 per hundredweight. August feeder cattle were $1 lower at $257.65 a hundred, and August lean hog futures $1.12.5 lower, $89.10 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures were a touch lower, with July futures down 8 points at the closing bell at 20.53. On a personal note, I want to thank everyone that's been praying for me. It's been a tough couple weeks here, but we're on the mend. I really appreciate those prayers and appreciate continued prayer till we get this thing all healed up. But in the meantime, this has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
Good to have Craig back with us, folks. And yeah, please do keep on praying for him. I've been texting with him back and forth. And Craig, he's just a workhorse. He's in great spirits and just a wonderful brother in Christ. So keep him and his wife Laura in your prayers as well as he's recovering. He's recovering well, which is really good. So thank you all for that. The chat is just going off the rails today. I love it. Not off the rails in a bad way. I mean a good way. But we got so many people on here talking about so many different things. The war in Israel. We were talking about entry-level jobs earlier in the chat with the conversation Shana and I were having earlier. Just some really good stuff there. One thing that I'll say, I kind of chimed in on that entry-level job conversation there. And, we do talk often about, what's happening in California with raising the minimum wage. And I do think it's really, really wise, first of all, for government to stay out of this stuff. I think that CEOs need to have some level of control over how much they're going to pay their employees. What a brilliant idea. But I do think also we do have to consider the fact that we live in a culture that is, for the most part, pretty entitled. And so I think this push to raise the minimum wage is coming from a lot of people who say, I deserve to make more money than I'm making. I deserve this. I want this. When really what we should be seeing is what is best for the business as a whole, the economy as a whole. Entry-level jobs are entry-level for a reason. And entry-level pay is entry-level for a reason as well, because it's an entry-level job. And as you work more and as you gain more experience and you gain more footing and you kind of gain a little more tread on your tires, you get to earn more pay, perhaps a better job, different things like that. I think that's all good. Those are all wonderful things. And it's reflective of a biblical worldview that if we work hard, God's going to bless us for it. So just my 2 cents there. It was a lively conversation in the chat, and you really should join us over on financialissues.org/live. It's always a lively chat on financialissues.org/live. So make sure that you join us there every day. But I appreciate you all chiming in on that. That was really good stuff. Quick headline here. U.S. gas prices falling fewer Americans are hitting the road. Let's see what gas prices are looking like today. Continuing to go down. They're right around $3.45 a barrel as of today. Slightly higher than yesterday, but continuing to tick down from the previous couple of months here. Basically, what we're seeing here is the average obviously is down a little bit, 9 cents lower from the previous week. Demand seems to be falling. Now, some of these experts are saying that this has to do with the pandemic and different things like that, and Americans have been adjusting their driving habits due to persisting inflation, high gas prices, and all that stuff might be true. But remember, folks, we have to see why this is happening. This is strategic, okay? This is strategic. The Biden administration announced several weeks ago that they would be releasing 1 million barrels of gas reserves from the Northeast Pipeline ahead of July 4th. They said sometime, these are Biden's exact words, between Memorial Day and the 4th of July. We are right in the middle between Memorial Day and the 4th of July right now. It makes sense why gas prices are going down. This doesn't mean that this is a good thing. This is something that was planned by the Biden administration. And I think a lot of experts are kind of ignoring the fact that this is an election year, folks. In the same way like we talked about yesterday, I think it was, or maybe it was Monday, that Powell and the Federal Reserve need to give an air of being in control to keep their jobs. That's why we at the ministry feel like we will see a rate cut before November 5th, probably in the September meeting, but we'll just have to see. In the same way, Biden needs people to think that gas prices are going down. Look, this is great. They were up around $5 2 years ago, and now they're all the way down to $3.40. Well, people tend to forget that during the Trump years, they were down near $2 a gallon. Wisdom and discernment, folks, are really good tools to have in times like this. And the beauty of it is that according to the scriptures, if we ask for wisdom, God will give it to us. And so especially when we see headlines like this, we need to use the wisdom that God has given us, look at everything that's happening in the culture to see what's really going on here. All right, as we finish the show here, I think we have time for one question. Grant, why don't we get to Bob's question there on Ask Shana?
Yeah, so we have a question from Bob, and his question is about debanking. You may have spoken about this practice before. Sorry if I missed your reply. Seems that banks can close accounts based on subjective perception of the holder posing a risk, whether financial, legal, or even reputational. Is this a risk to Christians? Years ago, Dan Celia spoke of establishing a bank. Does this exist? Thank you. And what is debanking, Seth?
Yeah, it's a great question, Grant. Thank you for that. So debanking is essentially what a lot of people say allegedly happens, and sometimes we see it actually is happening, where banks will freeze the accounts of certain people who are banking with them, and they'll essentially say, you can't bank with us anymore. Debanking, it's kind of deep, it's like deplatforming them, pretty much. And you know what, Bob, I think you're onto something. I think this is a real and serious threat to Christians. I don't think we need to be afraid of this, but I think this is something we need to keep an eye on. Headline from a couple months ago, 15 financial officers were probing Bank of America for alleged debanking of conservative and Christian groups in 2023. There was a similar report with JP Morgan and Chase, and it seems like a classic case of where there's smoke, there's fire. So to answer your question, Bob, yeah, I think this could be a risk to Christians, and I think it's good that you're aware of this for sure. That said, let me give you a few things here before we close our show. Number one, notice the culprits in these reports. JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, two of the biggest banks on Wall Street, obviously in the pockets of liberal investors and different things like that, connections to numerous powerful aristocrats. It makes sense that these big banks are doing that. My point in saying this is I believe it's far more likely to happen to you if you bank with one of these big banks than if you're banking with a small regional bank or with a credit union. So it's important, I think, good lesson to avoid these big banks in general. Second, I want to encourage you, Bob, not to fear. There is a promise in Scripture that we're going to be hated. And I think that hatred could even come from financial hatred. But it's a reminder of whose we belong to, okay? Now, second, I'll also say it's good to see Republican lawmakers fulfilling the purpose of government. This is a good and necessary probe. They're protecting the rights of private citizens. I think that's a good thing. So there is pushback, Bob, and there are people in the government who are aware of this. And then third, there remain many safe options for us to bank still. We at the ministry like credit unions. We think banks are fine too, so long as they're trustworthy and so long as they're backed by the FDIC or by some other credible source that you can have your funds backed, basically. So great question there. Your second question quickly here. Dan was not able to establish that bank, Bob, but doesn't mean that there aren't good, solid, safe banks out there. I'd encourage you to do some research about the small regional ones, credit unions in your area, and reach out to us if you need more help. Folks, great show as always. God willing, we'll be back tomorrow. Remember, it's all His. And to be found good and faithful stewards. God bless you all. We'll see you tomorrow for more financial issues.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.